All right. Hello, everyone. I don't know how long the starting of a stream is, um, but I just want to make sure that this is streaming on my end. And it appears it is. Sounds like audio as well. Video is okay. I mean, it's not the best kind of camera. It was like $30 or something. Um, but overall, pretty good. Awesome. Well, I'll give it a couple minutes before I get into really what I want to talk about here. Um, Essentially, I want to go over the commander bans in MTG because it's really taken a toll on a lot of people apparently. Can you see that actually? It's hard to tell. Let's see. Yeah, I guess you could sort of see that. Maybe I'll zoom in just a little bit here. Where are we at here? Here we go. One more, maybe? Alright. I think that's good enough. So, yeah. What should we say here? So essentially, as you know, the bans have happened for Magic, especially the Commander format. Personally, how it affects me, it doesn't really. I never purchased a Mana Crypt, never got into the Nadu, you know, swinging things, I guess. Um, really just didn't purchase that kind of set. Haven't really had, money to, and I usually play most of my Magic games online anyway nowadays. Um, I mean, I do play some Commander with friends every now and then, but it's super rare. Um, as for Dockside Extortionist, I feel like that ban itself um, was pretty understandable. Like, I've played games in casual where the game is just over. Somebody drops that down, make 17 mana, and just go off with whatever they need to go off. And then when they don't win, it's just a feels bad moment because you're sitting there for 15 minutes waiting for this person to finish up their turn. Sometimes 30 minutes waiting for them to finish up their turn. And it's really kind of boring. Um, Other than that, Jewel Lotus is probably the only band that I really disagree with out of all of them. For the most part, Jeweled Lotus to me just seems like, why print the card, right? Like, if you're going to ban the card in the only format it's really allowed to be played in, then what's the point of having the card anyway? And I'm sure you can't foresee the future and, mana being a big issue or fast mana being a big issue, but you can guess, like, as a company that's dedicated to making card games, you can make that assumption pretty easily. Um, I've played card games my whole life. I love card games. It's probably my favorite form of actual games, uh, over the board or even digital. It's probably my favorite of them all. You'll probably see me play most of those on here. Um, MTG, Marvel Snap, Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh. Those are probably the main ones that you'll see. You may get League of Legends here and there, which obviously isn't a card game. Um, I really like playing that as well, but for the most part, I like card games. So I wanted to talk about this because I feel like it's huge news. It's really thrown a lot of people for a loop here. Um, so I guess we'll start with this Dockside Extortionist. Dockside Extortionist, we've already covered a little bit, but it's just a feels bad card. It comes down on the battlefield. Um, 98% of the time, it's making quite a lot of mana. You have the occasional times where it makes 3 mana, and then they ramp just a little bit or whatever. But that card, understandably and fairly so, I feel was banned. I will say though, I truly feel that, especially with the new announcement that came out within the last day or so, of WotC basically saying, "Hey, we're gonna take over the format because of all the death threats and stuff that the rules committee members have been getting." It really should go into this two-sided format where there's casual EDH and then competitive EDH or commander, whatever you guys want to call it. I feel like in casual EDH, very few things should be banned. I think the rule should be that with casual, the people decide that are playing, right? Like, I mean, it's already like that. Rule 0 exists for a reason. But when it comes to like competitive, I feel like bans are totally fair. I feel like you want to shake up the meta. You want to prevent the best decks from just being the best decks. Otherwise, what's the point of playing the game if everybody has the same deck? Um, so I feel like bans in that make a lot more sense, and Dockside being one of them makes a lot more sense. Um, but the rest, it really should come down to just player base. Like if I want my friends to be able to play silver bordered cards in their decks because we've decided as a rule 0 that's okay, then you should be able to do it. Um, Next, we'll move on because I mean that's really all I have to say for Dockside. It's a cool card. It's not like extremely broken, but it can be, and pretty often it feels that way. Whenever it's drawn, especially if it's late game, it just seems to take over. Almost in the same way Hull Breacher did. Hull Breacher was just bannable for a whole different reason. The next card here, Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus is the only card out of this ban, this ban of September 23rd, that I feel is not worth the ban, especially in a casual format. Most of the time, Commander games can take up to an hour, sometimes longer, and this really just kind of speeds that process up. Casually you know, having 5 mana on turn 2, it's a lot. It's powerful, but I mean, it's only to be able to cast your commander, which is the whole point of the format, right? So why would you make a card that you're going to ban if it's only specific to one format? This card literally became like I'm surprised it's still worth money, to be honest. I'm really surprised it's still worth money because how did that get by so many different people? Like I just don't understand how they were like, well, let's make a something to tailor to commander players. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, woo! And then the guy was like, all right, it's gonna be just like Black Lotus, but you can only use it for your commander. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. We learned the first time with Black Lotus that 3 mana is very strong, especially when it's free, especially when it can be used the exact same turn it comes down. So the fact that that's been banned is really sort of disappointing. I just don't understand how that got through so many different people, to be honest. As a casual player, I think I have maybe one of these, and I'm still gonna use it in whatever deck it's in because I just feel like what's the point of having the card if you're not going to be able to use it? You know, I mean, you could sell it, I guess, and maybe I will. Who knows? But it just feels bad to have because it was made specifically for that format, and now it's not allowed. So that's the only ban that I truly kind of disagree with. I still understand the reasoning for it, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend it doesn't make sense, right? Like, it's totally a just too fast of a mana card, um, which we knew with Black Lotus. So the fact that it was printed to begin with is kind of dumb on their behalf. A money grab for sure. If that's the way they're going to play this, they're going to have to really worry about the future, sales of their entire player base because so many people are going to be very reluctant to buy these things if they're afraid it's going to get banned in the future. Especially with chase cards or poster cards, which this was for quite a while. So, other than that, I mean, it's a good card. I don't think it's that broken just because it's only able to be used for commander. Drawing at late game is really, really helpful if your commander's died, 3 times. That's +6 added mana that you're going to need to get it out. And this card helps with, half of that. So I would say on average, my commander is destroyed at least 3 times in a game. Sometimes more, very rarely less. Um, so it feels bad to not be able to use the card. And I would be happy with even like an errata version of this. Like even if they were to say, hey, you can play this only after turn 7 or whatever the stipulation of the card is, to make it so it's able to be used in the format it was made for. But yeah, that's the only thing I have to say about that. I'm not gonna beat the dead horse there. Next is Mana Crypt. To be fair, I like the ban of Mana Crypt, and I say this for the reason of Mana Crypt is too strong. Mana Crypt is one of those cards that feels cheap. Like having friends that would proxy it, or having, because it's expensive, like having friends that would proxy it, or having you know people that are whales that are able to buy cards outright, and they have it but you don't, feels bad because it almost always seemed like people would have this. And even watching, if you watch like the what is the Command Show? I haven't watched it in a while, so um, but it just, or the Command Zone. There you go, the Command Zone. If you watch the Command Zone, you've seen it played in basically every deck. Um, I mean, it comes out turn 1, not all the time, but fairly enough to be considered a problem in my opinion. Mana Crypt itself being 0 cost is the biggest problem for the card. You can use it the turn you get it. Turn 1 you have 3 mana. It's nothing strong, but it does allow you to play most mana rocks. I mean, turn 1 you could essentially play an Arcane Signet and a Sol Ring with this card and a land. So the fact that they banned it, in my opinion, feels right. It just feels fair. There's really not much to add about it. I mean, the damage to yourself it's minimal. It can come into play. I've seen it kill maybe 1 or 2 people in my entire time of playing Commander, which I played quite a few games, hundreds of hours if not. So, I mean, to me it just feels like it was worth the ban. It does suck though because it's an expensive card, and having that kind of just get ripped right underneath you is very poor on the rules committee behalf. Um, I mean, they don't deserve death threats and things like that because that's truly crazy to get that upset over a card game. Which, by the way, if you had the card in your deck anyway, you weren't planning to sell it, so it's not like you lost that much value from it anyway. Um, the fact that you can't play it legally now does make it feel bad because it's like, wow, I can't even sell it for a lot of money, which I mean it's still going for a decent amount of money, but I don't know. I would say hold on to it. If you have one, hold on to it or sell it to me really cheap because I'll take it for really cheap because I'm sure at some point there's going to be capable play for it. Um, I wouldn't expect them to just ban cards that are staples like this without having a plan to incorporate it in some way in the future. Um, I mean, as we can see, just down here, update on Silver Border Project. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's stated in this article, but I'm hoping that maybe that you're gonna start allowing silver bordered cards to be played a little bit more. Also, I would hope that for the future, if they do allow silver bordered cards to be played, um, that it includes IPs because uh, one of my friends makes it pretty clear that he does not like the IPs being added. Intellectual properties, for those that don't know what that is, but with the intellectual property of like The Walking Dead, how you can play as Rick Grimes is kind of silly. The fact that you can play as Optimus Prime, it's kind of silly. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I would be a sucker for Naruto. I'd be a sucker for One Piece. I'd be a sucker for any of those. But it should be silver bordered because they're not Magic the Gathering lore, right? It's not something that's in Magic the Gathering as an actual property of theirs. So the fact that they're able to bring these intellectual properties in and make them black bordered is concerning. Like it says a lot for the way that they're looking into money, you know, money grabs. Um, and yes, they're a business. They should be making money. They make a great game. Um, I'm sure that they're doing their best to try to keep everybody afloat without taking too much money from people, but their job is to make money. So it's understandable to have some cash grabs, but when you start piling them, it feels bad. You start to lose a lot of the trust that your fan base has for you. Um, so yeah, I mean, Mana Crypt being banned, totally understandable. Nadu, I haven't played with. I've seen the card played maybe once, maybe twice, and that's just watching other people play. Um, I may have faced it once or twice on Arena, but for the most part, um, I haven't really seen the card, in person or anything. So I don't really know much about it. It does seem a little strong. The clause of it being twice a turn for each creature is kind of crazy. Um, but being that it's blue and green, I mean a 3/4 flyer for 3 mana is pretty strong. But I don't know. I don't think it's broken, but I also haven't played against it, and when I have seen it played, it hasn't done like the craziest things. But I can see how it could. So banning it, maybe it was worth it. I personally think maybe they should have focused on banning it for like I said, if they have a casual versus competitive format, to make that change there. Um, but yeah, I mean it's pretty strong. Being able to add extra lands is always very strong. Having extra lands is, I mean, the name of the game, really. Having extra mana is quite literally the best way to win. So, take it as it is. They explain the bans and why they do it. I'm not going to read through these just because, I mean, we've already discussed a little bit about it. However, I will discuss that they're not banning Sol Ring. I personally really like Sol Ring. I think it's a neat card. It looks cool. It's not free mana. I mean, you're getting 1 mana the turn you play it if you do use it. So it's not like a huge ramp card, you know, in terms of like the turn it's played. It's more like an investment, really, for the future. And it's always fun to see a turn 1 Sol Ring. You know, I know people don't like it normally, and when it's not you, it feels bad, but it's a cool card. I like Sol Ring a lot, and I don't think it's as egregious as Mana Crypt for the fact that it costs 1 mana. Drinking some soda. But yeah, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's bannable. I mean, banning it would be a huge blow to the format, for the fact that like it's that and Command Tower are like staples, right? Like those are 2 cards in your 99 card deck that's going to guarantee, with the 1 commander obviously, so 100 card deck, but it's going to be the 1 card that those 2 cards are going to be the only cards that should be in every single commander deck. And if you're not playing them, then more power to you. So yeah, format itself is kind of shaken up because of it. I still am kind of in the same boat of like everybody else in terms of like, yeah, it sucked that they banned it. However, I think the most egregious problem with the entire thing is that they banned it without warning. And banning it without warning tells me and the community a couple things. I mean, we can assume, really. It's not guaranteed, obviously, but we can always assume. In terms of why wouldn't you tell people? I don't know. What's the reasoning for not telling people that there's a ban that's going to be shaking up the format that bad? Because I mean, it's a lot of money for a lot of players, and people have saved up, you know, a long time to be able to just afford a couple of those cards. Like it's a huge blow to casual players that literally spend their money on these cards to go play with friends. And sure, Rule Zero exists, and you know, there's no real sanctioned events or anything for it. You know, local game stores kind of have their own rulings as well when it comes to commander matches. Like one of the LGSs we played, one of the local game stores out by me, you know, we don't allow specific cards in some games. You know, some players, we've seen a couple over their decks and we understand their power level, and we're like, hey, you can take out that one combo that prevents one player from playing, and then you could play the deck. But if you don't take that out, no, like it's boring. If you get the combo and you have easy ways to tutor it out, and it's just boring. It doesn't make for fun gameplay. I'd rather just concede so you don't even get to do the combo, right? Like, so I love combos. I love seeing people go off. I love seeing, you know, 100 counters being placed in a turn, even if it takes 45 minutes. But if, you know, if the game is going to be boring, then there's really no reason. There's no reason to even have it played. So I don't know. I still think the ban was worth it. I think it was necessary. Overall, I'm kind of excited to see what they do for the future, especially with the new announcement that Wizards of the Coast is going to be taking over a commander. Wizards, I've been into card games my whole life. Commander is my favorite format. I know there's a bunch of people that are famous and have all, all the necessary experience and stuff behind it, but I've been a part of tons of betas, been part of tons of different card games. I've played pretty much every card game you could think of under the sun. Um, so I mean, if you guys need help, you know where to find me. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that the the bans were worth it. Maybe excluding Jeweled Lotus, just for the fact that it can't be played anywhere else. So, lastly, I'm just gonna read this last, what's coming up here. Um, Quieter updates. Oh well, I guess maybe I should finish that other thought. Is that they should warn players. They should definitely have some sort of poll or something they take on their website that says, out of these cards, which one do you feel is most bannable? And just pick the cards that you guys are thinking are the most bannable. And maybe, you get enough information to say, oh, these are actually bad. Like, these are actually cards that we should ban. But, and maybe you just do it anyway, even if people don't want it banned. But at least you gave them the heads up, meaning that there's a chance it could be banned. We're thinking about banning. So that gives these players time to sell their collections or sell their cards or trade them or whatever they want to do to have some control of the situation. And I think the biggest problem was that Wizards, you didn't allow control of the situation for the players, and that seems money hungry. It seems very just greedy in the way that, like, why? Like, there's a couple reasons, there's a couple reasons that people have spouted off, and a couple reasons I've thought about my own. And, I'll shout out a couple of them just because I think they are worth mentioning. The first being insider trading. If you don't tell people about the ban, it gives you time to go sell. And we can all assume, based off of, the information that these people had told, is that they don't do that. Is that, they're very strict about that themselves, and they ban people from the rules committee if that were to take place. But where's the accountability? Prove it. Prove that they didn't sell them. The only way to do that is to showcase your entire collection, and nobody's going to do that. And if you are going to do that, more power to you. Then you're truly reliable. You're somebody that we would believe, right? But for you to just ban them quietly is concerning. Truly, it's really kind of sad, because people don't like feeling that way about the rules committee. Like, we want to be able to have trust in our rules committee, and we want to be able to have, open dialogue, and none of that happened. Nobody talked to anybody and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you guys think about this? If we do this, is this going to be an issue for too many players? Is it too egregious of an issue? Are we in the right for wanting to ban these? And even if you didn't listen to the community, you still gave them heads up. By talking about it, you gave them heads up. So they can't be mad that, they're 5 mana crypts, worth $1,250 total, is just now worth, far less. Again, I don't own any. If I were, I would probably have just proxied it because it's too expensive. I think, honestly, the most expensive cards I own that I purchased, that I actually bought because I wanted to, probably would be Mana Drain. And why? I had the extra money at the time. I wanted Mana Drain. I didn't really want to proxy it because I wanted to be able to play it in one of my decks, actually one of my favorite commander decks, which is Yannette, the Sovereign. And I just felt like it was worth the cost. But if you had told me 6 weeks later that the card that I would, spent some of my extra birthday money on, or whatever it is, whatever I got it from, was worth, $25 after the ban, after it was going to be banned, I probably would have just proxied it. And if you at Wizards of the Coast wants to make some money, then you probably shouldn't just quietly ban cards. But yeah, other than that, I'm going to go over the last part here, and then we'll talk about kind of the goals for today in terms of like gaming. I do want to play some games. I don't really know what I want to play. I kind of want to play Magic the Gathering just so I can get a few games in. But maybe build a new deck. Who knows? I really don't know yet. I don't have any like viewership or anything, so it's really kind of just whatever I feel like, I guess. But yeah, I guess we'll go over this real quick here. So it says what's coming up. Hopefully quieter updates. We talked in the last update about providing players with better ways to communicate about silver bordered cards in their deck. That project is going well, but isn't quite ready for release. So we're holding off announcing it here. We expect it to be out by the next announcement at the latest. We're working with the folks at Wizards to provide some new tools to use in pre-game conversations to help folks find like-minded players, and are pretty excited about some of the possibilities here. No promises on the timeline yet, though. Whatever happens, we'll be back with our next update on November 18th after the Magic the Gathering Foundation's pre-release. In the meantime, tune into the charity stream and keep on brewing. So, I don't know what this Silver Border Project initiative is going to be like. I'm guessing it's going to be the ability to play silver bordered cards in your decks, but is that like for like standard? Like I'm confused on what they would mean by that, and I haven't looked at the other announcements, so I don't even know if maybe they go over it a little bit more in there. Maybe I should go read it, but I don't know. I think I'll save that for off stream for myself. But silver border cards in like Commander, I've always been fond of playing those. I feel like if the card's not crazy, like it's not like something that's gonna make me have to stand up, pat my head, and turn around 6 times and jump on one foot, then like I don't really care as long as the card is able to be played and played relatively decently. Let me go over to this here. So, with all that said, I guess you could say I agree with the bans. I understand the bans. The only ban I don't really agree with is obviously Jeweled Lotus. But it's not my choice, not my say. Namaste. So, I guess we'll see how this shapes things up and how Wizards is going to end up combating the rules committee dissolving. I would probably want, to be honest, if I had to ask for people on the rules committee to be there, I would probably want to have the people that stood up for the casual players during that time, which would be Josh Lee Kwai, Olivia, I don't know her last name, and those two specifically that stated that they weren't for it. Even though Josh isn't on the rules committee, he was part of the advisory group. So I feel like those two people definitely deserve some sort of paycheck, payroll, whatever, for the Commander format, because they clearly had the player's best interest in mind. And if you guys had said something, they may have said, "Hey, if you guys want to ban it, tell everybody first. Give people some time. Give people some time to cope." You know, like, because nobody had time to cope. Everybody went straight into, honing in on the issue, which there's really no issue. It's a card game. Cards are gonna get banned. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh, you'd know this. Cards are gonna get banned. So yeah, I definitely hope to see in the future a better communication route for possible bans or upcoming bans. I think that's about it. I'll be back in a little bit to stream some more. So, if you ended up watching this later on, thank you. Since I got nobody in here, but pass it around if you like the content, if you like the voice, if you like my hair, whatever the case may be. Go ahead and put a follow in, and I'll see you guys soon.